All right, let's just jump right in. I want you to imagine something. A world that's completely untethered. No maps, no clocks, no satellites whispering directions down to us from orbit. I mean, before we could cross oceans with any real confidence, there was just uncertainty.
I mean, really think about it. You're lost in a thick fog, a dense forest, an endless desert, or just out on the open sea with nothing in sight. We all kind of assumed the compass was the big answer, right? The first great tool for taming all that chaos. But what if I told you that long before the compass ever guided a single ship, it had a purpose that had nothing to do with getting from point A to point B?
Yeah, the original compass, it wasn't about navigating the physical world. At all. Its whole purpose was something, well, way more profound. So, if it wasn't for space, what was it for? This is the real story. The compass actually began its life not as a tool for sailors, but as a Chinese divination device. You know, a kind of bridge between heaven, earth, and human fate. This isn't just a story about a tool. It's a story about how we see the world itself.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to rewind way back. We're talking thousands of years, to ancient China. And back then, orientation, it wasn't just a practical problem. It was a cosmic one. Facing the wrong way wasn't just, inconvenient. It was actually considered dangerous.
What we're looking at here is a completely different worldview. I mean, for the ancient Chinese, direction meant being in alignment with all these invisible forces that governed everything. They saw the world as this living, patterned system. And get this, magnetism, astrology, even how you governed a city, they were all just different expressions of the same universal order. So if the universe has a structure, you better believe you had to live in harmony with it. And to do that, well, you'd need a tool to read its orientation.
And that's it. That's the need that kicks off the real story of the compass. But believe me, this first compass didn't look or act like anything you've ever seen before. Okay, this is one of those facts that just kind of blows your mind. The first compass didn't point north, it pointed south. Yeah, in ancient Chinese cosmology, south was the primary most important direction. Emperors would face south to rule, palaces open to the south. It was all about warmth, life, and authority. North? That was the direction of darkness and cold. So to face south, that was to face order itself.
This earliest compass was called the Sinan, and that literally just means south pointer. But it wasn't a needle. Nope, it was a spoon, and it was carved from a naturally magnetic mineral called lodestone.
Just try to picture this. You've got this smooth, polished bronze plate, and it's etched with all these cosmic symbols, the cardinal directions, trigrams, the whole deal. Right in the center, you place this special lodestone spoon. You give it a gentle spin, and as it slows down and settles, the handle just swings around and points directly south. Think about it. No wires, no batteries, no explanation of magnetic fields. Just this eerie, uncanny movement. It must have felt like actual magic.
So this strange power of lodestone, this rock that could just move on its own, it demanded an explanation. And the explanation they came up with, well, that marks a really critical shift in how we think.
Remember, this is a culture that was already totally convinced the universe speaks through patterns. So this wasn't just some neat little curiosity, it was a message. They didn't ask the question we would ask today, what force is this? No, they asked the ancient question, what does this mean? And that single question led them down a totally different path, not to navigation, but to divination. They used it to figure out the right auspicious alignments for tombs, for city gates, for ceremonies. It was a tool to guide their decisions, not their travels.
But this big breakthrough, it didn't happen overnight. It was a super slow, practical transformation that took centuries. That big, heavy spoon eventually turned into a little magnetized metal fish floating in a bowl of water. And then finally, that became the suspended or floating magnetized needle that we'd actually recognize today.
And somewhere along the way, through this long process, people started to notice something extraordinary, almost by accident. They realized that no matter where you went, the needle always pointed the same way. It wasn't pointing towards some symbolic heavenly direction anymore. It was pointing to a fixed point, something embedded in the earth itself. That realization just shattered their whole cosmological frame. The tool wasn't just reading the heavens anymore. It was reading the planet.
And this shift from a divine tool to a practical one, it changed everything. I mean, it completely set the stage for how we would redefine the entire world. So by the time we get to the Song Dynasty, Chinese texts start talking about using the compass for travel. At first, it was just over land, and then along rivers.
But the final frontier, of course, was the open sea. Sailors figured out that when the clouds hid the stars and the coastline was gone, that little needle stayed calm, steady, and totally reliable. And just think about that. The very same object that was once used to align tombs was now aligning ships. But the compass did way more than just help people not get lost. See, once direction could be an abstract idea, once north and south existed as concepts all on their own, separate from any landmarks, well then the entire Earth could be imagined as a grid. And that allowed you to plan routes, to estimate distances, and to actually trust that you could make a return journey.
And this change, it had this huge cascade of consequences. Trade didn't just expand because ships were faster, but because they were suddenly way more reliable. The compass and all the knowledge it unlocked started to travel west. It eventually arrived in Europe, but by then it was completely stripped of all its mystical origins. You just can't escape the irony, right? A device that was born to interpret your fate became the very tool that let people go out and redraw the entire map of the world.
So you might think the story kind of ends there, right, with the age of exploration. But it doesn't. Not really. Its original purpose is actually still alive, and it's hidden in the very language we use every single day.
Yeah, this really gets right to the heart of the whole thing. The earliest compass never asked, "Where are you going?" It asked, "Are you in harmony with the forces that are bigger than you?" It was never about a destination. It was about your position, your alignment, in this much larger system of meaning.
This right here, this is like the ghost of the compass's past. Think about it. When we talk about having a moral compass or losing direction in life or feeling aligned with our purpose, we think those are metaphors about sailing, right? They're not. They're philosophical leftovers, echoes from a time when the compass was a guide for the soul, not for the ship.
So, the next time you see a compass, maybe on your phone screen or your car's dashboard, just remember its true origin. It all started as a stone that pointed south, a spoon that seemed to move all on its own, a quiet reminder that long before we humans tried to master the world, we first tried to just align with it. And in that search for harmony, for meaning, we accidentally discovered how to cross the entire planet. What began as a tool to understand our place in the cosmos ended up becoming the very tool that let us chart it.